Reno Omokri, a former aide to former President Goodluck Jonathan, has stated that Vice President Yemi Osinbajo's presidential declaration speech was emptier than the West Africa Examination Council certificate of President Muhammadu Buhari. Omokri also challenged Osinbajo's supporters to list any achievement that could earn the VP the presidential seat in Nigeria at the 2023 elections. It will be recalled that Professor Yemi Osinbajo on Monday officially declared his intention to contest the 2023 presidential election. He made the declaration in a short broadcast shared via his Twitter handle after months of intense speculation. Reacting to the declaration on Monday, Omokri challenged the vice president's supporters to point out specific achievements listed by Osinbajo in his declaration speech. In a series of tweets on his Twitter handle, Omokri said he was ready to give $1,000 to any supporter who is able to list the vice president's achievements. Joining us from Canada for more analysis of the VP's presidential declaration speech is Reno Omokri, a former aide to former President Goodluck Jonathan. Good morning, Mr. Omokri. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Tundu. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good morning, Reno. Well, I was trying to reach you yesterday to congratulate you on your award as a business influencer in Africa by Business Insider. Congratulations. Very proud of your achievement.
You weren't able to reach me. I was out whale watching. So we were away from signals, deep into the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, well, it's good to see you this morning and congratulate you formally.
Thank you.
Quickly, what do you have against Vice President Osinbajo? You dismiss his declaration, even when you know clearly that it's within his fundamental human rights to seek to succeed his boss. And you say you want to give out $1,000. Well, I mean, I know I can list many achievements of the vice president that can earn me that $1,000. But this is not about what I think, it's about what you think. Why do you object to his aspiration?
No, I don't object to his aspiration. I never did object to it. What I said is that how he declared his aspiration, I said that his presidential declaration, that it was empty. It was emptier than Buhari's OYX certificate, and that is saying a lot. Because when you declare for the presidency of any nation, what is expected is you have to have vision, and then you have to show leadership. And leadership is the ability to transform vision into reality. And we saw none of that in Osinbajo's declaration. It was very empty. It's almost as if he heard that the APC governors were going to meet Bola Tinubu the next day, and he already put something together. You know, it was empty. You know, the man was talking about promises. This is a man who's been in office for 7 years. He should have been able to talk about his achievements. Like, I promised this in 2015, I promised this in 2019, I have achieved that. And he was not able to do that. So that speech, if you listen, you can listen to that speech 10 times and you won't remember anything from it because it's immemorable. The man it was just noise. It wasn't news. And that was what I was saying. He has a fundamental right. He's a professor of law. You know, he can contest. But then he should tell Nigerians what he wants to do. There were no plans in his declaration. You know, there were no specific achievements that he has done. As a matter of fact, his declaration was more or less like a threat because he said, I'm going to continue from where Buhari stopped. And look at where Buhari has stopped. Buhari has caused Nigeria to be the world headquarters for extreme poverty. Buhari has made Nigeria to be a beggar nation, going from 12 trillion naira debt in 2015 to about 50 trillion if the new 6 trillion naira loan application is approved. So it was a frightful thing when you see something coming out with no vision and then panic in Nigeria and say that you're going to continue from where this man has stopped. When a week before you declared 100 people were abducted after the Kaduna-Abuja train bombing, we don't know what's happening to them. The government has not even come up to give us updates yet. And you're saying that you are going to continue securing Nigeria just as Buhari has secured Nigeria. I mean, people at home were frightened. I mean, look, we are insecure right now. We are the third most insecure nation on earth. Only Afghanistan and Iraq are worse than us. And you're telling us that you're going to continue like that. So that was what I was saying. The man's declaration was within his right, but it was an empty declaration.
Right. Apart from the substance of his speech that you just referred to now, you also referred to the vice president as a backstabber. Now, there are different schools of thought emerging in regards to that. There are those who think that it's an act of disloyalty because he used to work for Asiwaju Bola Tinubu to contest at the same time as his former boss. There are those who feel that it's an act of disloyalty, and also there's an added dimension, a more sinister dimension of the typical trend that we tend to get historically of two Yoruba men being pitted against each other by unseen forces from elsewhere. And there are those who argue that it's his right to contest, that he's qualified, he's capable, and he can go ahead and throw his hat in the ring, regardless of who else is running. But you have described him as a backstabber, and you have said that this is going to be a pattern of behavior. Would you like to explain that point?
First and foremost, let me address a stereotype that you have just put across, which is false. A lot of people say that Yorubas are backstabbers and disloyal people. That's not true. If you look at the history of Nigeria, some of the most loyal people in Nigeria have been Yorubas. If you look at Colonel Adekunle Fajari, when he was offered the chance of even succeeding his boss, Aguiyi Ironsi, he chose death. He said, no, I'm not going to abandon him. He chose death, and he followed his boss to his death in Ibadan, 1966, January 15. If you look at Tunde Idiagbon, the loyalty that he showed to Muhammadu Buhari in their military regime, also with Olusegun Obasanjo, the loyalty that he showed to General Muhammad. I mean, the Yorubas are some of the most loyal people. So this is not about Yoruba nature. Yoruba people are very loyal. This is about this man. It's a personal trait. Now, we know how he became vice president. Initially, the idea was to float a Muslim ticket. And then the former Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, at that time, a member of the APC, said, look, we can't countenance this. Nigeria is a very frail country right now along religious lines. And so we can't have a Muslim ticket. That was how Bola Tinubu was kicked out of the ticket in 2015. And so General Muhammadu Buhari offered him the chance of nominating his vice. And so he sent some names, and then Buhari took Osinbajo. Osinbajo has not attained anything in politics on his own. Osinbajo is a mere civil servant, and there's nothing wrong with being a civil servant. But even in business, he has not even achieved anything. He was a lecturer, and then he was a special assistant to the then Minister of Justice, and then he became Attorney General by Tinubu's appointment. So the man owes his political ascendancy to Bola Tinubu, and Bola Tinubu sent him there to be a placeholder. So for him to do this right now, I mean, it's obviously, an act of betrayal, a stab in the back. So, look, it's not that, I'm not Bola Tinubu's biggest fan, but one thing I know is that I believe in character. People have said about me, I'm a very loyal person. You cannot have character without loyalty. I also happen to be a pastor, and one of the things that Christ, why God promoted Christ, and we see that in Scripture, he said that Christ was loyal. And so we see that a person without loyalty is really not someone that you can rely on. And if you can do this to Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, if he becomes president, he's going to do the same thing to General Muhammadu Buhari.
Okay, so a lot of people argue otherwise with you, Reno. They'll say, number one, you say he's never run a business. You forget that he is a senior partner in a legal practice. And a legal practice is a business. Simon Coopers, that's a legal practice, and he's run a practice for quite a while in his life, and he's run other practices. Secondly, you said nothing is bringing nothing to the table. This is a professor of law. Some people argue with you. For Christ's sake. They'll say, this is man, a professor of law. He went to the best schools. He went to LSC, had his master's in 1980 and the likes. He's done both business. He's served in the government sector and the private sector and the likes. He's a public intellectual. You said there was nothing in his speech. Some people argue with you that he talked about universal health. He talked about rejigging security architecture. He said all the fine language there. So people are asking, Reno, what is your qualms really? Are you being objective about that speech, really?
Yeah, to respond to you, I'm a legal professional. My father was an appeal court justice. My grandfather was also a legal professional. So I come from a long line of legal professionals. Having a law firm is not a business per se. Having a law firm is just something that comes natural from you being a lawyer. So when you talk about having a business, for instance, you're talking about having a business that employs people. A law firm cannot employ people who are not in the legal profession. You only employ lawyers and paralegals. So you're talking about building a business that employs people. So that just actually rules out.
So a law firm is not a business, Reno. A law firm is not a business, Reno. A law firm is not a business.
If you interject, you're not going to allow me to
Go ahead.
To land. So I said that when I talked about a business, I'm not talking about a law firm. A law firm is a natural consequence of being a lawyer. So you either practice or you lecture or you're in the judiciary. So when I'm talking about a business, I'm talking about a business where you employ people, like for instance, like maybe a small and medium scale business, like maybe you're doing a trading concern, you're doing like manufacturing. That's what I'm talking about. Now, to go back to his speech, look, if you can say, if I want to declare, for instance, and I say to you, I'm going to bring security, I'm going to bring health, I'm going to bring jobs. That's what he said in his speech. I mean, I can quote from the speech if you want me to. That's what he said in his speech. He's not talking about plans. How are you going to do these things? For instance, in 2015, and you can look at the tweets that he said that, and I'm quoting him, we are going to deliver 3 million jobs per annum. As a matter of fact, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics in 2016 said that under the Muhammadu Buhari regime, 11.7 million jobs had been lost. Now, I think it was last year, Yemi Osinbajo, the statistician general, said that unemployment in Nigeria had risen to about 33%, and this is quoting Yemi Osinbajo, he had been under pressure by the Muhammadu Buhari administration to quibble with the figures. So you can see that he made promises about providing jobs. Those promises were not met. And then they whittled away jobs that they didn't provide, but other administrations provided. So you can just come out and you say all those fine languages. It's very, very easy. But you've been in power for 7 years. What have you done? What are your specific achievements? And what are your plans? You can't just say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Anybody can say that. You are declaring to be the president of the biggest black nation on earth. You made this country at the 26th biggest economy in the world, the 3rd fastest growing economy in the world. Now, you made this country the world headquarters for extreme poverty. Tell us your specific plans. Don't just say, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this. How will you do it? That's what I was referring to. And I'm trying to be objective here. Like I said, he's got the right to declare. But this is a country. I'm a part of that country. I'm a citizen of that country. I pay tax. I've got employees in that country. I'm a stakeholder. So I have the right to be able to dissect when a man is trying to pull the wool over the eyes of Nigerians.
Okay, Reno, look, apart from the Vice President's speech yesterday, I think there's another document sent to me, I think, by Kayode Ajulo, in which an attempt is made to list, the achievements of the Vice President as Vice President of Nigeria and what he's been able to contribute to the Buhari administration. If I'm able to locate that document, maybe I'll share it with you. And you too can also investigate and find it. But let's leave the Vice President Osinbajo's matter. I'd like to ask you, in the PDP, there are about 14 aspirants. In the APC, we also have quite a number of aspirants. All of them, they want to be president. And there are others that are not in these two mainstream political parties, including Kingsley Moghalu and many others who have shown interest. Now, who is your favorite aspirant or likely candidate? Just looking at the field and assessing what each of the persons who have declared interest are bringing to the table. Who do you think is most prepared?
Well, I'm going to say this. I'm not going to mention a name, but I would say that the person who is most prepared is the person who is talking about his plans and his visions for Nigeria. I'm so sad that a lot of people are talking about where they come from. A lot of people are not talking about what they can do for Nigeria. They are seeking the presidency on the basis of where they come from. And we've seen what has happened when we elect leaders on the basis of where they come from. Muhammadu Buhari is a very good example. So we can't go that route again. We need to elect leaders on the basis of how they can perform, on the basis of competence. And for you, the only way you can gauge competence is that you look at their plans and then you look at their past behavior, because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if you have a person who has not succeeded in his business, and when I say business, I'm not talking about, like, for instance, you are a lawyer and you set up a law firm. No, that's not the kind of business I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual business where you can employ people who are just regular people, people who don't have to. So if you look at that, if you look at it from that perspective, you've got a number of people, and I don't want to talk about any of them specifically, because if I do that, their team, they're going to take this interview and then they're going to start blasting it and say Reno Omokri endorses them. But Nigeria needs somebody who's talking about what he can do for Nigeria, how he can do it, not where I'm from, and that this is my qualification. Give it to me because you are up where I'm from.
So does that mean that you are not averse to PDP possibly being close to making a decision to jettison the zoning agreement? The zoning committee has said they came to a unanimous decision. They've documented that decision, given a report to the National Working Committee. That's as far as we know so far. But a lot of people are speculating that PDP will not zone for the 2023 presidential elections. What is your take on that?
If I were PDP, I would focus on winning and not focus on zoning. You see, if PDP is a serious political party, and I believe they are, they should focus on winning, not on zoning. When they are in power, then they can zone from a position of power. See, right now, they are not the ruling party. So they must focus on winning, not on zoning.
All right, Reno, you kept on talking about that law firm and business, then I'll take you back to it. Law firms pay taxes the last time I checked. So they are run businesses, and those lawyers, they don't work pro bono. So it's a run business regulated by the government. They pay taxes, they employ people. Just for the sake of checking, if you think businesses are about big employment, there are law firms that employ thousands of people in the world. Nabarro is one of them. It's one of the biggest law firms in the world. I'd like to ask you, if you say there was nothing in that speech, and a lot of people feel you're just being unfair to Vice President Osinbajo, because if you want specific numbers of jobs created, there's another document called a manifesto. Mostly a declaration is just a gloss over the things you do, and you put the granular detail in the manifesto when it comes out. And correct me if I'm wrong, no candidate, as we speak today, has released their manifesto. So I'd like to ask you, what is it you will have seen in that speech that you didn't see?
Well, to go back to what you're talking about, and I addressed that, you see, when I talk about a business, I'm not saying that a law firm is not a business, and I did already explain that. I said a law firm is a business for lawyers. It's the natural consequence of becoming a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. My father was an appeal court justice. My grandfather was a lawyer in the police force. So that's what I'm talking about. Having a law firm it's just, for instance, like, if you're a doctor, you go to school to become a doctor, you're going to have a medical practice. So when I'm talking about running a business, I'm talking about running a business that is not congruent to you, like being the logical sequence of you, like of your profession, like going to school, becoming a lawyer, and then, set up a law firm. That's what I meant. And I've already addressed that. Now, in that speech, if you look at the speech, I've written presidential declarations. If you watch presidential declarations in the United States, even in the United Kingdom where they have a parliamentary system, you see that, yes, it is a review of what you want to do, and then a manifesto comes later. But even in that review, even in that summary, you list some of your plans, and then you list some of your visions. We did not see that in Osinbajo's declaration. Now, I don't know if you have the declaration before you. I read it. I can quote aspects of it. He talked about that he's met with traders, he's met with some of our soldiers. He stands where they stand. Now, that's just basically grandstanding. What we're expecting from it is to say that, look, this administration, when we came up, we made some promises. First and foremost, we said we are going to provide 3 million jobs per annum. In the last 7 years, we have fulfilled that promise. And to ensure that Nigeria does not fall back, we're going to have continuity. We didn't see that. Look, I just said that now. I said that in less than 10 seconds. I talked about a promise made, a promise achieved, and then a plan to continue it. We did not see that. That's what I'm talking about. It's not to use highfalutin and fine language. Look, I contested for student president when I was in my secondary school. And in my declaration speech, I actually did better, in my opinion, than Osinbajo did when he gave that speech, I believe it was 2 days ago.
Okay. Quickly, Reno, I've been busy with my phone here trying to call up the document that I was talking about. It's a 120-page document on this, my phone. And it's titled, just a moment, it's titled Osinbajo, the unveiling of Osinbajo, if empowered, an impact assessment report. And in 120 pages, the people who put this report together, I guess they are, members of the Osinbajo support group. They call themselves the Identify the Right Leader group. In 120 pages, they try to document what they think Vice President Osinbajo has been able to achieve in his capacity as Vice President of Nigeria. I'll forward it to you. You may agree with their content or not. But I find it curious that whereas I asked you a question to assess the other, presidential aspirants, you said no, you would rather like to characterize the right kind of leader. But yet, you have done a very general assessment of Professor Osinbajo. I mean, many of these other persons, they're very well known to you. You know persons like former Governor Peter Obi, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Ayim Pius Ayim, Reno Omokri, and so on and so forth. I mean, you know all of them. But I just wanted you to do an assessment, of as many of them as possible, and what you think each person can bring to the table, even if you don't go as far as saying, this is how we vote. Okay,
well, I'm going to do an assessment, but before I do that, let me come back to the vice president. Now, if the vice president, wants to talk about his achievements, then how come he was fired by General Buhari as being the head of the economic management team? In 2019, he was fired. So if he was delivering results, he wouldn't have been fired. The president would not have brought another person to handle it. The economy was going down, and there was a reason why the president fired him. Now, in terms of the candidates that have declared, if you look at somebody like Peter Obi, Peter Obi is somebody that has done a lot in the business world. He has set up businesses. He's got a very, very good reputation there. And also in government, he's set the standard. He took a state that was educationally backward, and then he invested in education, and then that states now, along with Imo State, have now become the most educationally advanced states in Nigeria. And then also, he's been able to help the state build on their manufacturing base. As you know, Anambra State, of which he was governor, they have a very solid manufacturing base in a place called Newi. And then he built on that. So if you look at his declaration, when he declared, he was able to talk about those things, and he was able to talk about his future, how his plans, how he wants to take Nigeria forward by replicating what he did in Anambra. So you see what he's done there. He's talked about what he did in the past, the promises he's made, and then how he's fulfilled them, and then how, based on that, he's going to be able to do something like that for Nigeria. Now, that's what was lacking in Osinbajo's speech. Now, Aide Momodu, he talks to me, now in his own declaration, and I told him personally when I spoke with him, I said, what I'd like to see, what I would have wanted to see in your declaration, because you've been going around and you've been talking to people, is I want to see more about your visions and your plans for Nigeria. You don't have to go into granular detail, but you have to talk about what you want to do, why we can trust you to do that because of what you've done in the past, and just maybe a summary of your pathway. Now, if you look at all the candidates in the PDP, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, he's done that. He's talked about what he did in the past. For instance, he was the head of the National Council of Privatization. They made some promises, and then they were able to privatize the telecommunications sector, and Nigeria went from a tele-density of less than 1 million lines to about 58 million lines by the time they were handing over power, and to about 100 million lines today. So he's talked about what they've done. He talked about his plans. He talked about that he was going to continue with the privatization of the critical sectors of the economy, and they succeeded in the telecom sector. They're going to privatize sectors like the oil and gas sector. Now, that is a plan, We didn't see that with Osinbajo. So if I'm going to assess the other candidates, I'll tell you that in the PDP, at least, Peter Obi and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar have given out articulate plans in their declaration. In the APC, well, I'm yet to see Bola Tinubu's declaration. But from the people who have declared, I've not been very impressed. I saw Amechi, his declaration was more or less trying to run around the stadium, and then he ran 1/3 of the way, and he became tired. So obviously the message it was going to send was lost in the race. I would say of those who have declared, the people who have given, somewhat satisfactory declarations are Peter Obi and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar.
Right. I'd like your thoughts on this unfolding horror that's happened since the Abuja Kaduna rail terror attack, where you have over 100 Nigerians who are being held by terrorists, God knows where. There have been videos released of them pleading with the federal government to help them. Their families have spoken out, making similar pleas to the federal government. The terrorists are saying the federal government knows what they want. What's your reaction to this? And I ask you, seeing as, of course, you're one of the strongest advocates for Leah Sharibu, who has been held by terrorists herself for over 4 years now.
Well, my response to this might surprise us, you and your viewers. But the thing is, what we have to realize is that no country has defeated terror militarily. No country has defeated terror militarily. Terror can only be defeated by negotiation. Now, I know people say you don't negotiate with terrorists. That's something that people say for the camera. If you look at Northern Ireland, the terror continued. They called it the Troubles, and then it was only in 1998 where they had the Good Friday Agreement, which is actually the Belfast Agreement, that they ended terror. The same thing that we saw in Palestine and in Israel with the two-state agreement. What we have in Nigeria, you see, how this terror started, we had a historical wrong done with Muhammad Yusuf, how he was extrajudicially murdered. And then, that led to like a metamorphosis of his previously peaceful group, and then they became violent. They destroyed their mosque. So we need to address that historical wrong. We need to bring the people who were responsible for Muhammad Yusuf's murder to trial. We need to pay reparations to his family. And then when we've done that, then we're going to rob the people, these terrorists, of their recruiting tool. That historical wrong has been responded to. Then we need to secure our borders. When we secure our borders, then what we need to do is that we need to start negotiating with these people, like, okay, we've addressed this historical wrong. What other wrongs do you have? Now, in the case of these terrorists who did the Abuja Kaduna bombing, a lot of them tend to be herders, Wodabi herders, who we in Nigeria we mistakenly call Fulani. They're actually Wodabi herders. Now, they've had issues where they, their livelihood have been lost. That they say their livelihood have been lost. They are cattle rearers. Now, we need to, those who have legitimate claims, then we need to address them. And then we need to now start to talk with their elders. They meet every year in a place in Niger State. They meet every year. So there are people that you can talk to that, look, we've addressed your historical wrong. You need to get your people to stop doing these things. And that's how we're going to end terror on a large scale. Now, for this particular issue, these people, about 100 Nigerians are in the hands of these people. Now, if you go and bomb the forest, you're going to kill them and the people that they've abducted. So what we need to do is that we need to get to people like Sheikh Gumi, who knows how to reach these people, and say, to Sheikh Gumi, look, reach these people, get them, especially this is the holy month of Ramadan, get them to cooperate with the government, release these people, and then we begin to address their specific issues, And also, we need to recall that the government, this administration, the minister, I think it was not the Minister of Defense. Yeah, the Minister of Defense said that they have back channels. So they should use those back channels to talk to these people, to bring those people. Because if you try to go in there militarily, it's going to lead to a bloodbath. And then the people, these 100 people that have been abducted are going to be killed. I know it's not what Nigerians want to hear, but this is the only way that, if you look at the history of how other countries have been able to resolve issues like this is the only way that this is going to be resolved.
All right, Reno, you said that President Osinbajo was sacked from the economic monitoring team, but a lot of people argue with you as regards that by saying, yeah, the president dissolved that team, but the vice president still led the National Economic Council, which has been on top of major economic deals like the Infraco deal in this country, about 15 billion US, and it was that same vice president National Economic Council team that went ahead to institute, panels across the country for NSAS. So some people argue with you that, you say it's been sacked out of the economic management team, but he has still done some of the biggest deals as regards the economy. And that also team worked as regards, COVID-19 and, meeting the needs of Nigerians during that period. That's what some argument will say. But I'd like to ask you about this. I'll talk about your former principal, Reno. Because you served with Atiku Abubakar. I remember your political career starting up in the early 2000s as being, I think, an essay to a special advisor to Atiku Abubakar. I know there was a long correlation there. A lot of people are saying it's old and it's not a turn of the North. That why is Atiku Abubakar in the race? What would you like to say about that? So people like Kasim Afegwa said Atiku Abubakar should stay off. Because even if he emerges, After his first time, he'll be well into 80. So what will be your advice to him vis-a-vis the zeitgeist of the nation that says it's time for a southern president?
Okay, well, first of all, let me address some of the things that you said. Osinbajo was sacked from heading the economic management team. Now, being the head of the National Economic Council is not something that anybody can do. It's a constitutional position that the vice president holds. So it's not like like he can even be sacked from that. And it's wrong for you to say that this National Economic Council thinks that they've negotiated the biggest infrastructural deals in Nigeria. No, this National Economic Council being headed by Osinbajo, which has the 36 governors, they have overseen a destruction of Nigeria's economy. Nigeria's economy right now, is like an economy that is one step away from insolvency. Nigeria is now the world headquarters for extreme poverty. We've gone from a debt profile of 12 trillion in 2015 to a debt trillion of about 44 trillion, and they've asked to borrow 6 trillion more. So by the time that's approved, it's going to be 50 trillion. In terms of infrastructure, the biggest infrastructure ever built in this country in the last 25 years was the Kaduna-Abuja Railway, and that was built by our administration. So the facts don't bear out what you've just said. And then also, I was a consultant in the office of the vice president in 2003. I was working in England, in Parliament specifically, and then the vice president invited me over. So I was a consultant. I was working with an SSA, Chris Mama, and so we were working together on these communications. And that was what we did in 2003. Now, you talked about his age. You got to remember that age is not necessarily a liability; it's more or less an asset. If you look at the United States reached its Senate under the presidency of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan became president on his 70th year. He became president of America, and then he was able to lead America at a time when America was facing the kind of crisis that Nigeria is facing. America was facing internal crisis and external crisis with the Cold War, and Ronald Reagan was able to defeat the USSR in the Cold War, and that enabled America to divert resources that they were spending on the arms race into pressing domestic issues, and that led to the groundwork that made America to have the kind of progress that they had in the 90s, because they were no longer spending their monies on the arms race. So Reagan was their oldest president at that time. He became president at 70, his 70th year, and he governed for 8 years. So if you look at the man, Atiku Abubakar, he has a very, very good record in public service for about 20 years in customs. And then thereafter, he went into the private sector. He employs more people than the Adamawa state government. So I don't want to come here and start campaigning for him. I'm answering your specific question because you raised that issue with Atiku Abubakar. Now, in terms of where he comes from, like I said, Nigeria should focus on competence. We should not be electing leaders based on where they come from. That's what we did with Muhammadu Buhari, and look at where he has led us. So we don't want a person to say, okay, I'm going to be president because I come from the south or because I come from a northern. We don't want a southern president or a northern president. We want a Nigerian president. That's what I'm going to say on that.
Okay, Reno. Very quickly, let's problematize this issue of disloyalty that is being brought up against Vice President Osinbajo a little bit further. And, we have history in this regard. In the 1957 Eastern, House of Assembly elections, a gentleman called Sam Ikoku, who was then 34 years old, ran on the platform of the AG against his father, Alvan Ikoku, the unionist and educationist, and he won. How about that for loyalty and disloyalty? His own father, and he won. His father lost.
Well,
in the First Republic, Akintola, who was deputy premier to Awolowo, ran against him more or less to become premier of the Western region. In Ondo State, Akin Omobori, who was deputy to Ajashin, ran against Ajashin and he won. Of course, there was a blowout in Ondo State after the election. Don't you think people are accusing Professor Osinbajo of disloyalty, are focusing on the wrong things?
Well, then, to come back to what you're talking about, you've given some historical aspects of this. Now, what has been the consequence? You mentioned Akintola. What was the consequence in Western region of that disloyalty? That action was cited by Chukwuma Kaduna Nzegu as what ignited the January 15, 1966 coup. And we're still suffering the consequences of that till today. You talk about Akin Omobori. What happened after he did that in Ondo State? You saw what happened, that the state literally it led to a conflagration. And that incident was cited by General Abacha as one of the things that ignited the coup that removed President Shehu Shagari. So disloyalty does not end well. Even in the heavens, what happened when Satan was disloyal? It did not end well. It does not end well. So, and it's a character trait. This man was put there as a placeholder by Bola Tinubu because they could not countenance a Muslim ticket. So, okay, this man was a placeholder. And then now, apparently we know what must have happened. Probably Muhammadu Buhari he doesn't want to be succeeded by Bola Tinubu despite the agreement. And he's probably encouraged his vice president to run. And then maybe he's telling him that, listen, we're going to find a way where we are not going to have a direct or indirect primaries. We're going to have consensus. And if we have consensus, we will favor you. But it doesn't matter. It's a character trait. Loyalty is the only currency that you have in politics. And people know me for that. I believe in loyalty because without loyalty, you cannot have anything. If you're going to war, and politics is war by other means, you got to believe that the person behind you has your back. And once you are looking back because you're not sure, then you're going to be defeated because the other person is coming with people who have their back. This man is a disloyal person, and disloyalty does not end well. We've seen historical consequences of that in Nigeria.
Right, you've made that extremely clear, Reno. But I want to ask you, for you, what are really the defining issues of the 2023 elections? What should we be focused on? Because all this talk of loyalty, all this talk of zoning, as you've said, could just constitute a distraction here.
What Nigeria should be focusing on in 2023 is how to devolve power from the federal government down to the states. We see, we made progress on that from 2010 to 2015. But then, Muhammadu Buhari came in and he doesn't believe in a lot of that. He said so. He jettisoned the 2015 National Constitutional Review Conference. And so we need that process to start again. We need a devolution of powers. We need Nigeria to restructure. And thank God for a state like Rivers State with the governor like Wike, who has pursued that judicially all the way to, I believe, the appeal court now, and then it's gone to the Supreme Court, whereby states are now beginning to take power of the VAT from the federal government. That is a good step. So we need people who are restructuring minded because, if we continue to do things the way they've always been done in Nigeria, we're not going to get a different result. We're already the world headquarters for extreme poverty. Nasir El-Rufai was on Channel Television the other day, and then he was saying, look, we want to bring in mercenaries because the federal government, has failed woefully in providing security. So we need people to look into the aspects of state police, because we cannot have just a central police in Abuja, and then that central police, is hopelessly, ill-equipped to handle local issues. We need local policing, and we cannot have somebody with the mindset of Muhammadu Buhari who believes in a concentration of power in Abuja. We can't have that. So that is the issue of 2022. And you're right, so it's getting lost in all these issues, on all this talk about zoning and age.
All right, real quick, Reno, something happened leading up to in fact, on the day of the presidential election in 2019, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar came to the venue, but he refused to debate and he left because President Buhari was not there. Make a case for somebody that refused to debate when Nigerians are ready to watch his ideas because one of the opponents was not there. Some Nigerians felt, hang on a minute, let me finish, Reno. Some Nigerians felt injustice was done to them. They were waiting that night. But he didn't debate, and it was said that it was in that venue. Make a case, Reno, for Atiku Abubakar, your boss, for that incident.
Atiku Abubakar is not my boss. That's very unfair for you to say that. Why would you say that? Yeah, Atiku Abubakar is not my boss. Atiku Abubakar gave me my first job in politics. I was a very young man. I was in my 20s. But, he's not my boss, I mean, like, I don't have a boss. The last person that I worked on that was former President Jonathan, and I served him very well, and he said very glowing things about me, you know. But right now, I'm a #1 best-selling author. I have my own business, you know. I don't have a boss in politics, you know, and this is one of the things that I encourage politicians to do, you know, after they leave office, that they should have their own independent business that funds them so that they are able to, you know, be objective and criticize anybody they want to criticize, so that because they're not making money from politics, they're making money from business, which is what I'm doing. Atiku Abubakar is not my boss.
Okay,
right. I mean, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, so Reno, answer the question about your first boss. Let me correct myself. Him not debating that day. So he's not your boss, but your first boss.
The best,
yeah.
Yeah, he's the best person to answer that question. But what I want to say is that what you're talking about is not what happened. However, I do know that he's going to address that question himself. I don't want to address that for him. I'm not his spokesman. But that is not what happened, you know. I mean, I have an idea of what happened, but I'm not authorized to talk about it. He's got his own spokespeople, and then he himself is ready to address that. But that is not what happened. What you just talked about here is not what happened.
Okay, Reno, well, let's end it where we started from. I started by congratulating you on your award. Hopefully one of these days you will come home to Nigeria where you can properly organize, as we say, the implications for the award. I hope you come home soon. Thank you very much.
And then before I go, can I just say a belated happy birthday to Rufai? You know, I know that it was a birthday some days ago. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Reno.
Thank you. Congratulations on all sides.